Welcome to your NCFE Level 2 Certificate in Principles of Team Leading, Session 2 of 2. Today's session will cover Principles of Team Leading, Understand Business, Understand how to communicate work-related information. My name is Phil Church and I shall be your narrator and guide for today's session. This NCFE Level 2 online certificate in Principles of Team Leading course has brought to you by Poplar Harker and Solutions Equinox Online Learning Training Solutions. The units being covered today are Understand Business and Understand how to communicate work-related information. Some important notes for completing your assignments. It's important to understand the action verbs in the assignment questions. The action verbs that are being asked of you in these assignments are define. Your answer must give the precise meaning of a word. Describe. In order to describe something, you must give a detailed account of it. Explain. You need to ensure that your answer is clear, revealing relevant facts. Identify means to point out and explain. Your answer should establish who or what something is. For example, if something's asking you to list a list of leadership and management models, don't just write John Adair or Bruce Tuckman. Write a bit about Bruce Tuckman and a little bit about John Adair, so we can show that you fully know and understand the subject. We will tutor you throughout the program and help you to complete the 2 assignments. Once you submit your assignments online, they will be assessed by our assessing team. All of your completed assignments will then be submitted for internal and external quality assurance. And once this process is complete, you'll be awarded your qualification. We have a remote assistance service and we can be contacted at learners@solutionsequinox.com, and this is important. Your subject of your emails must be marked with NCFE Leadership. That way it will avoid any confusion of any emails coming in and you won't have your email missed. There are 2 contact telephone numbers there for the support service if you need to speak to us. So, in this section, we are going to cover understanding organisational structures, and our objectives in order to do so will be to explain the differences between the private sector, the public sector, and the voluntary sector, and explain the features and responsibilities of different business structures. Explain the relationship between an organisation's vision, mission, strategy and objectives. What are the differences between public sector, private sector and third sector? Private sector companies have been set up to make profit for their owners, whether they are small sole traders or large corporations with multiple shareholders. You may have seen the suffix LTD for limited company or PLC for public limited company. Solutions Equinox, our company, is a limited company. Public sector organisations tend to provide services to the general public and do not tend to make profits. However, there are some exceptions to this in the form of government-owned companies such as Network Rail. Some good examples of public sector companies are police and fire services and the NHS. The voluntary sector is often referred to as the third sector, and it comprises of social enterprises, charities and community groups. These organisations reinvest their earnings and do not make profits, as they are termed not-for-profit. Some examples of voluntary sector are Marie Curie and Oxfam. Your assignment question is asking you this. For question 20, explain the differences between the private sector, the public sector, and voluntary sector, or the third sector. You can find some extra reading within pages 50 to 52 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. But just to recap, private sector organisations that are set up to make a profit, to provide an income for the business owners. Public sector organisations that provide services to the public, they generate income but don't necessarily make a profit. Voluntary sector are not-for-profit organisations. They are social enterprises, charities, and community groups. What are the features and responsibilities of the different business structures? For a sole trader, an individual owns 100% of the business, and the business in itself is not actually a legal entity. A limited company is a separate legal entity which is owned by at least one shareholder. A partnership where at least two people own a business which is not in its own legal entity. Limited liability partnerships, or LLPs, are separate legal entities which are owned by at least two partners. And some examples of businesses which fall into these various categories. For sole traders, think of your DIY, your people that deal with decorating, painting, window cleaning. They could be classed as sole traders. For limited companies, Stagecoach, Virgin, Sky, our company, Solucious Equinox, British Petroleum, they're limited companies. And for examples of some partnerships, think of your lawyers and your solicitors' firms. And for limited liability partnerships, again, Virgin, who in themselves own Stagecoach and in themselves own Virgin Trains. Now, there are responsibilities relating to different organisations. Private sector businesses have legal responsibilities to Companies House. And a director is legally responsible for running the company and making sure that information is sent to Companies House on time. And this includes the confirmation statement. And the confirmation statement is a document that limited companies and limited liability partnerships must file at Companies House each year. For companies, the confirmation statement contains details of its directors and shareholders, while the confirmation statement of an LLP lists its members. They would also include their annual accounts and any change in the business company's officers or their personal details, such as their personal names or address details. A change to the company's registered office, and any allotment of shares, any registration of charges, and any change in the company's people with significant control, or PSC details. Charities are governed differently to other organisations in that charity trustees are the people who share ultimate responsibility for governing a charity and directing how it's managed and run. The way charities are funded is different to other organisations, and as a consequence there are strict controls on how this money can be spent, and compliance is regulated through this by the Charities Commission. Your assignment question for question 21 is asking you this. Explain the features and responsibilities of at least 3 different business structures. And further reading can be found on pages 53 to 56 of your unit handbook. But just to recap, let's think back of some of the ones that we have just covered. Sole trader, a partnership, limited partnership, limited liability partnership, private limited company, public limited company, public sector organisation and third sector organisation. So there should be plenty there to help you answer this question. Company mission, vision, statement and purpose. Now, the purpose refers to communicate organisational vision and goals and how these apply to stakeholders. They guide strategy development, informing goals and objectives, influencing organisational principles, behaviours and culture within the company. And mission statements are a broad definition of the organisation's mission. It is sometimes referred to as a creed or their purpose. A good mission statement inspires employees and provides a focus and direction for setting lower level objectives, certainly when it comes to yearly appraisals within teams. Now, can you guess the company from these vision statements? Every little helps. Never knowingly undersold. What companies use those vision statements? Of course, we know that every little helps is Tesco, and never knowingly undersold is John Lewis. And for corporate governance within a company, the board of directors and their committees are bound by the legal and regulatory frameworks that are held within legislation and for moral and ethical purposes within their policies and procedures. Their organisational hierarchy from the CEO, the board of directors, through to everybody on the teams on the factory or sales floors. They're all bound by monitoring and internal control to ensure that objectives are being met, where appraisals are held and all of the data checks and analysis of results are kept. Making sure that everybody is following transparency and accountability, ensuring that all data is complete and reflects fully what is expected of that data, which is then in itself bound by policies and procedures, which is then reported back to the board of directors, who are there themselves bound by these policies and procedures. And intertwined in amongst all of that are the company's vision, mission statements with their strategy and their objectives and their goals, which are set specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and timely to enable a company to grow. And the vision states the future goals of the organisation, and the mission is based on the current values and beliefs, the strategy of how to achieve goals set out in the vision, and the objectives are the detailed goals and targets within this strategy. And the vision, mission, strategy and objectives should reflect and be reflected in everything an organisation does. So for example, if John Lewis wants to grow their business by 10%, everything within this circle needs to align to this. So their staff development would be on sales training. So the monitoring and internal controls would monitor this training and would be monitoring the sales within the company. So the board of directors and their committees would set this goal out. And they'd be looking to see whether this is bound by any legal or regulatory framework. This could align to operational needs, the requirement for longer hours, therefore the overtime payments and legislation around the working time directive. In order to achieve this, will they need to recruit more staff in order to achieve this? Therefore, the staff that are recruited, they would have to be recruited following employment law. And that organisational hierarchy needs to abide by this as well and follow this procedure throughout. This would be continuously monitored, and any recruited staff or any staff that's working towards this goal and anybody that's working towards these objectives would have to have these aligned in their annual or yearly appraisals or half-yearly appraisals. This would then be bound by transparency and accountability, because once again, all of this data that's coming in and all of the objectives have to be accountable and open for scrutiny by the board of directors or to members of the public and the stakeholders alike who have shares within the company. Once again, in order to align to assure that a company wants to grow, let's, for example, John Lewis say by 10%, they have to ensure that their own policies and procedures are adhered to in order to achieve this. Question 22 is asking you this. Explain the relationship between an organisation's vision, mission, strategy and objectives. So the vision states the future goals. The mission is based on the present values and beliefs. And the strategy is the idea or plan about how to achieve the goals set out in the vision. And the objectives are the detailed goals and targets within the strategy, usually set by team leaders, supervisors, managers, leaders for their teams. And further reading can be found on pages 57 to 58 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. In this section, we're going to be covering understanding the business environment. And our objectives are to describe the internal and external influences on a business. Explain the structure and use of a strength, weakness, opportunity and threat or SWOT analysis. And explain why change can be beneficial to business organisations. Internal and external influence on business. All companies are affected by the environments that occur within and external to the business. And some of these internal influences that affect business are those such as their policies and procedures and their planning and strategy of tasks, objectives and any new business. Their management of staff and how they're recruited, and the communication technologies and policies and procedures they use within, such as email, memos, and so forth. The reputation this company has, and the image, and the brand promise. As we said earlier on, Tesco's brand promise is every little helps, and John Lewis's is never knowingly undersold. So those brand promises are what is expected to be influencing everything within the company to go that extra mile. Some of the external influences that are occurring are costs of raw materials. If you are in the construction industry using metal and wood, or any other industry such as driving long distances and haulage, fuel costs, if any of these rise as a result of the costs of raw material, this is going to be an external influence on your business. Labour costs. You need to take into account the fact that there may be an increase in the minimum wage, or your new strategy may mean you need to require more staff, so you need to recruit more. So that's going to increase your labour costs. Changes in technology. If you're in an environment that's using technology, you need to make sure that it is up to date and it is current and valid, because if it falls behind in technology, you're going to be beaten by your competitors who are going to be looking to shave off as much money as they can using the latest technology, and they are changing tack in what they do and how they approach business. New legislation. If, for example, you're in a company that builds semiconductors and are using lead-based solder, legislation would have changed to decree that that is no longer the case and you must change. Therefore, you need to change your practices. So all of your internal influences would need to change within your policies and procedures, and maybe even the planning of the training of your staff within planning and strategy. And the changing expectations of customers. The COVID-19 coronavirus saw many companies who didn't offer click and collect or home delivery do very much that. We at Solutions Equinox are very much a classroom-based company that we go to your workplace and deliver. Because of the coronavirus, we changed to deliver on the expectations of our customers to deliver our services online. and changing standards and regulations all have an impact on the influences that not only occur from within but also externally as well. Your assignment question is asking you, for question 23, to describe the internal and external influences on a business. Think of some of the ones for internal that we have. So just to recap, internal policies and procedures, planning and strategy, management and recruitment of staff, communication, reputation, image and brand promise. For external, world prices of raw materials and labour, changes in technology, competitors' activities, changing expectations, new legislation, regulations or standards. In order to achieve your business goals, you need to know their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats, or SWOT, and a SWOT analysis for business planning. So for strengths, financial strengths, what is your most reliable source of financial growth? Is it your current customers, a particular product, your service fee structure? Customer strengths. Where is your customer growth coming from? Is this coming from referrals or a particular industry segment like healthcare or retail? Is it mainly retail or commercial? Why are your customers choosing you over your competitors? Internal strengths. What do you do very well as an organisation? Are you the first to innovate products in your industry? Do you have a strong customer relationship or partnerships? Learning and growth strengths. Where do you excel insofar as your employees are concerned? Is it your compensation model? Could it be your workforce development program, your culture? Weaknesses. Financial weaknesses. What is your biggest financial weakness? Perhaps most of your customers are in a cyclical industry and subject to market whims, for example, or maybe your most used product has the lowest profit margins. Customer weaknesses. Where do your customers think you need to improve? This could be your investment products, locations, loan origination, or competitive prices for interest rates. Internal weaknesses. What do you do poorly? Do you have opportunities to improve in project management for opening new branches? What about for one-touch call resolution for customer service? Learning and growth weaknesses. What are your biggest challenges with employees? Do you have particular high turnover in certain departments or a negative perception of the organisational culture? Opportunities. Financial opportunities. What is your biggest opportunity to improve your finances? This might be a good starting point on a new product line, increasing customer retention, or going after a new geographical area. Customer opportunities. Where could you dramatically improve with your customers? Could you improve your online interface? What about cross-selling related products or better understanding your customers' purchasing habits? Internal opportunities. What processes will drive you into the future if you could improve upon them? This may entail partnering with a mortgage origination company or developing neighbourhood sponsorships. Learning and growth opportunities. What opportunities do you have to leverage staff? For example, do you have cross-training opportunities? Could you make a few tweaks to improve your culture and thus your retention? And threats. Financial threats. What threats could seriously impact your financial health? This could be low-cost competitors, a partner entering the banking space, or an overseas banking product. Customer threats. What is your biggest concern about your customers? Does one of your competitors offer zero fee checking that could steal some of your market share? How simple is your customer's ease of departure? Internal threats. What current areas of your business might harm you later? Do you have a new product rolling out soon that could potentially fail? Are you struggling through a merger or an office upgrade? And learning and growth threats. What threatens the people within your organization? This could be anything from instability in your customer support department to staff member departures to a department-specific pushback against new technology. Now, question 24 is asking you this: to explain the structure and use of strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat, or SWOT analysis. So an organization can use a SWOT analysis when reviewing its business plans, analyzing a situation and working out its plans and strategies for development. And a SWOT analysis looks at strengths, what the organization is good at, weaknesses, areas that it needs to improve, opportunities for improvement, opportunities to maintain or improve, threats to such progress that things may stop progress. Organisational change and its benefits. Now, organisations change over the years, and some will start out with one goal in mind, and over the years things will change and they go on to do different things or produce something completely different from what they set out in the very first start of their company. It's beneficial for organisations to change and reflect the realities of the marketplace in which they operate. And many companies that you may know had their origins in very different sectors to the ones that they operate in now. For example, Babcock and Wilcox. Babcock and Wilcox were originally boilermakers. Then they became shipbuilders, and they have now diversified into just being a service company and are one of the largest in the world. They maintain aircraft, submarines, and they even train police and firefighters through their training divisions. Now, Group 4 started off as a security company and merged with Securicor to become G4S, another service company with interest in security, training and service provisions across the world. Porsche started as a tractor builder and diversified into sports cars. Ironically, Porsche are now one of the biggest SUV builders, as that side of the business is bigger than sports cars, showing that they've really embraced and further embraced change. And another example of a car company is Lamborghini. They started producing tractors and now they produce cars. And British Aerospace was purely an aircraft manufacturer, and through mergers and purchases now builds submarines, ships, planes, tanks, small arms, missiles, etc., etc. And Stella Artois took over other companies around the world to become InBev. And now they run pubs, hotels, and make spirits, wines, and of course beer all around the world. Companies change for all sorts of reasons, and those who fail to adapt don't survive. Companies may change for a number of reasons, and some of these include outperforming competitors by changing processes, changes to take advantage of opportunities, keeping up with technology changes, change to keep up with demand. They want to expand and take over other companies, for example, to improve procedures, cost savings to increase profits, reducing staffing levels and gain greater flexibility, and developing new skills for the workforce. For example, we, Solucious Equinox, Coronavirus, COVID-19 came along, and we were predominantly teaching within classes. So we'd be delivering leadership and management, safeguarding courses, face-to-face in classes. When the coronavirus came, we adapted, and we then branched off to online learning. And therefore, this program has been brought to you for an online learning course via us. Your assignment is asking you this. Question 25. Explain why change can be beneficial to business organisations. So just to recap, several ways it can help them, for example, to keep up with and outperform competitors, to adapt to market changes and take advantages of new opportunities, comply with new regulations and legislation, keep up with changes in technology, keep up with changes in demand, improving procedures, saving costs, increasing profits, developing their workforce skills, and gain flexibility. And further reading can be found on pages 67 to 69 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. In this section, we're going to look at understand business reporting within an organisation. And we will be looking at explaining methods of measuring business performance. Explain the use of management information and reports. Explain how personal and team performance data is used to inform management reports. And describe a team leader's responsibility for reporting to stakeholders. Measuring business performance is important to ensure the organisation is on track to make a profit or meet key milestones in growth, etc. There are various ways in which performance can be analysed, and some of the tools include the use of SMART goals and SMART targets. As previously discussed, we looked at SWOT analysis, an examination of key performance indicators to see if they are being met, and the use of charts such as Gantt charts, milestone charts, or any other charts or graphs that allow you to see if whether or not targets or data is being achieved. Analysing reports and data. Now, some of these are incredibly important. As we previously looked at, SMART targets are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. This is important when it comes to things like appraisals and the objectives, as we discussed with the vision, mission, statement and goals, that your team need to have their objectives at their appraisals set along these SMART goals in order to ensure that the company's objectives, or certainly the team's objectives, are being met in order for the company to meet its goals and its vision and mission statement. Your assignment question is asking you this. For question 26, to explain the methods of measuring business performance. So, I'd like to see some explanation around some of the areas we've discussed, such as the SWOT analysis. You might want to look at data analysis, key performance indicators, or even benchmarking. Further reading can be found on pages 69 to 71 of your unit handbook. Management information and reports are important to make comparisons between outcomes and the original organisational objectives, to understand how the organisation is achieving its purpose or to ascertain why it is failing, to identify how the organisation is using its human resources. Is it effective, or could savings be made? And to identify how the organisation is using its physical resources. Is it effective, or could savings be made? To plan organisational operations. to identify problems and potential improvements, and to advise organisational shareholders and decision makers, potentially for any investor groups wishing to buy your business, or to certainly to invest in it. So question 27 is asking you this: to explain the uses of management information and reports. So some of the ones that we recapped earlier on were: compare the outcomes with the original objectives, to understand how the business achieves its purpose or why it failed, to identify how the business uses human resources or physical resources, to plan operations, to prepare forecasts and monitor trends, to identify problems and potential improvements, and to advise stakeholders and decision makers. So using personal and team data to inform management reports. So for personal and team data, the management reports inform managers on matters concerning performance relating to an individual or performance relating to a team, whether they are underperforming or whether they are performing to task. And that management reports inform the manager certainly on the matters concerning the underperformance. And then when we talk about the individual, you'll see how that links in. And this is essential for long-term and short-term planning, to know that you have an effective team made up with effective individuals. If you're planning long-term goals or short-term goals, you need to have an effective team. So the personal data, it's about the individual's productivity and whether the individual is performing to task and effectively. And any individual sickness levels, whether they are having excessive sickness or whether there's been no sickness issues with them at all. Where these staff with these particular skills are deployed. And the staff's skills and abilities. It's important to have a team that has mixed abilities in order for you to hit all of your relevant objectives. Any disciplinary records or any other personal related data and information that's deemed necessary and relevant. For team performance, it's about the team productivity and any team absence levels. Not so much of an individual being sick, but these teams could be abstracted to other locations or other departments or for training days. You need to keep a monitor of that to understand why there may be any dips or lapses in performance. What the team is being utilised for, and is it being utilised for effectively? And as stated earlier on with the personal data, the combined skills and the abilities of a team. For strategic use, it identifies areas requiring action, produces health and safety risk assessments, business risk analysis, allocation of resources where required, and training and development needs, linking to any strategic business planning required. So imagine your company has just won a new contract and you need to plan. You may need to consider, do you have sufficient capacity to meet demand? Or do you need to recruit more staff? Do your current employees and teams have the right skills to meet this new demand? Are there any staff members who are unsuitable for the new work? If so, for what reason? Could this be for poor attendance rates, poor disciplinary records, health and safety, health-related matters? Is there a requirement to upskill staff? And can this be done internally, or does it require external training companies? And any other planning would cover multiple business areas. So question 28 is asking you to do this. It's asking you to explain how personal and team performance data is used to inform management reports. So to recap, Some of the areas that we covered were to identify areas that require action, to produce health and safety risk assessments, for business risk analysis, to show where resources need to be allocated, to show training needs and career development opportunities, and for business planning. And further reading can be found on page 73 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. So the responsibilities of the team leader for reporting to internal stakeholders. So the team leader, what do they do? What is their responsibility for reporting to internal stakeholders? Well, they report forecasts, sales, productivity and performance, progress reports, projects, work streams, and so forth. Opportunities for cost savings, any leaner production methods or better ways of doing things, highlighting problems that they can see on the sales or factory floors or within the office, providing better team coordination, planning that because they know their team and they know the team they work with and the individuals within. And they are reported to company owners, to the company shareholders, certainly through to their line managers and their senior managers, and most importantly team members, because it's important to keep your team informed. And any information that is shared must comply with the GDPR and any organisational policies that are set by the company. Question 29 is asking you to describe a team leader's responsibility for reporting to internal stakeholders. So just to recap, team leaders often have to make reports to a variety of internal stakeholders, including owners, shareholders, senior managers and team members. Reports can be informal or formal on a wide range of subjects, and some of those we just covered were forecasts, progress, opportunities, problems, suggestions for improvement, feedback, and plans to coordinate teams. And you must remember that any information that is shared with others must be within the guidelines of confidentiality and the GDPR and company policy. Team leaders and managers need to make sure that their reports only contain information that the recipient is authorized to receive. In this section, we'll be looking at understand the principles and techniques of work-related communication. And we'll be looking to describe communication techniques used to gain and maintain the attention and interest of an audience, to explain the principles of effective written business communications, explain the principles of effective verbal communications in a business environment, and describe the importance of checking the accuracy of information to be communicated, and describe the importance of explaining to others the level of confidence that can be placed on the information being communicated, and describe the advantages and disadvantages of different methods of communication for different purposes. Maintaining the attention and interest of an audience. Good communication is key to successful outcomes. Poor communication can lead to misunderstandings and errors being made. If you think about your own communication skills, have you ever asked someone to do something and they did it wrong or not how you intended? It's unlikely that people will do things to deliberately antagonize you, so the clue may be in how you communicate. And there are different forms of communication, and we will look at these as we go along. Some techniques for gaining or maintaining the attention and interest of your audience. Rapport building. Always greet and welcome your audience Make small talk with people as it breaks down barriers. I frequently, when I attend clients' addresses for customers, their learners who are walking into the classroom to be delivered a training session such as this, I will always welcome and greet the learner as they arrive, point them into the direction of any tea or coffee, and ask how their day and their journey was. It just breaks down their barriers and it gives them a chance to bed themselves in for the day. Be polite and courteous. Being blunt, aggressive or rude causes friction and barriers to be raised. If you're going to have your audience with you, always ensure you tell your audience how long the presentation will be. It's different for online learning because you can always see at a glance how long the presentation will be. But if people are coming to a training session, they may have their eye on the clock because they may have other things they need to take care of for personal reasons after the training session is complete. So always tell your audience how long they are going to be with you. Perhaps ask your audience to save questions to the last to avoid disruptions. This is particularly important if you have quite a long message to deliver. You may want to have everybody listening in and have the questions saved to the end because you may, during your delivery, actually answer those questions that they are going to ask you. Make your presentations relevant to your audience, whether that be with the use of standing in front and delivering and the use of systems such as PowerPoint and Excel. Always follow a structure and move around and engage your audience. Use eye contact, use appropriate humour, smile and use open body language. And always use open questions. Speak clearly and steadily. Use the right language for your audience. Avoid jargon. It can cause confusion. Some companies use the same acronyms across different structures of companies. For example, within the education and policing, the term CID means something completely different in both locations. So avoid using jargon. Give out any supporting information at the right time and have it prepared. And when I was talking about open questioning, that's important to use questions such as TEDS, tell me, explain to me, describe to me, or show me. And 5WH, which is who, when, what, why, and when, and how. Forced choice. Quite a few burger restaurants use this choice, this type of questioning. Would you like fries with that? Would you like to go large? Not really giving you an option. Closed questioning is where you only deliver a yes or no answer. How many times have you gone into a shop and somebody working in retail has asked you, can I help you? That's a closed question. A more appropriate question would be, how may I help you? Because you can't really say no to that. Leading questions, where you're kind of putting the words into their mouth. So, did you come by train? Rather than, you should be using, how did you come today? How did you travel today? Rather than, did you come by train? So question 30 is asking you to describe communication techniques used to gain and maintain the attention and interest of an audience. So, just to recap, greet and welcome the audience, be courteous and polite, let the audience know how long the presentation will last, invite the audience to save their questions until the end, make sure the presentation is relevant to the audience, follow a structure or agenda, move around, smile, use good eye contact, appropriate humour, open body language, asking open questions, speaking clearly and steadily, using the right level of language for the audience and subject, and give out supporting information at the right time. So for written communication can be delivered in the form of letters, notice boards, Presentation materials such as PowerPoint and storyboards, contracts, memos, brochures and newsletters, press releases, manuals, digitally using the intranet, websites, social media, and instant messaging. But when thinking about communicating within the business, you should consider some points. You need to ensure that your communication has a clear purpose and point. Ensure your communication is concise and to the point, short, clear, and simple. Ensure its contents are up to date and, above all, accurate. Write your communication to the intended audience, formal for formal occasions. Use the appropriate tone. Communications are often misinterpreted from a content perspective, but also tone. Use the correct communication method. So your question for 31 is asking you to explain the principles of effective written business communication. So make sure that your communication has a clear purpose. The communication is short, clear and simple. The information is accurate and up to date. The audience awareness, using an appropriate tone, choosing the right method for the task. And further reading can be found on pages 80 to 87 of your unit handbook. Don't forget some of the answers that we've just previously covered. Effective verbal communication. Keep your communications as short as possible without being rude. Ensure you are to the point and accurate. Use simple, plain English. Communicate in a manner appropriate to the situation and the other person. Focus on vocabulary, the tone of your voice, the pitch of your voice, and the volume of your voice. Information is of no use unless and until it's carefully put into words and conveyed to others. Encoding plays a very important role because it initiates the process of communication by converting the thought into content. When the information reaches the recipient, their prime responsibility is to understand what the speaker intends to convey. Unless and until the second party is able to understand or decode the information what the sender wants to communicate, the message is actually of no use. Thus, encoding and decoding are the two most important factors of an effective communication, without which information can never flow between two individuals. Schramm's model, which he created in 1954, revolves around this principle. According to Schramm's model, coding and decoding are the two essential processes of an effective communication. He also emphasizes that the communication is incomplete unless and until the sender receives a feedback from the recipient. So imagine a person sharing their thoughts with their friend and their friend not responding to them. Is the communication complete? No. Schramm believed that communication is actually a two-way process between the first party and the second party. So, along with verbal communication, is there importance to have importance of non-verbal communication or body language. So the ways of talking, the pauses, and the stresses on particular words. Posture. Is the person delivering the message slouching? What message does that portray? Is the person receiving the message that you are delivering slouching? What message does that portray to you? Their appearance. Are they untidy? When I used to train new recruit police officers, one of the first lessons that I used to teach them was that their appearance was the first thing that people saw. If you looked untidy, you thought untidy. If you looked tidy, you thought tidy. Head movements. Are they engaging? Are they showing that they are nodding in response to your questions or what you're saying? And hand movements when you're gesturing whilst talking. Eye movements. Are they looking at you? Facial expressions such as a frown. A frown could mean confusion, could also mean distaste. Body contact such as shaking hands or the patting of a shoulder for reassurance. Is the person becoming too close, invading your personal space, or you are invading their space? Or the sounds, laughing, or a cough. So question 32 is asking you to explain the principles of effective verbal communications in a business environment. So, just to recap some of the areas, make sure they are as short as possible without being rude. Make sure your communications are to the point and accurate, are in simple, clear English, and are delivered in a way that is appropriate for the situation and the other person. And focus on vocabulary, tone of voice, pitch of voice, and most importantly, volume. The importance of checking the accuracy and currency of communicated information. When seeking to communicate information, either internally or indeed externally, it is vitally important that this is checked for accuracy and validity, or its currency. It is time-consuming to rectify information that is incorrect, as emails may need resending with corrections, bulletins recirculated with corrections, and so forth. Not only does it show you in a bad light, it can also make your organisation look unprofessional and unreliable, which in turn could undermine stakeholder or customer confidence. So it's important to get it right first time. Producing information that is consistently accurate, current and up-to-date helps to avoid operating errors, and this affects multiple areas across the business. It saves time, especially when errors do not need correcting, and stakeholders get the right information the first time. It avoids any complaints and legal action, and it sends out an image of professionalisation and competence of the originator and also the organisation at large. So question 33 is asking you to describe the importance of checking the accuracy and currency of information to be communicated. So look back through some of the answers that have just been discussed, and further reading can be found on pages 94 to 95 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. Why it is important to explain to recipients the level of confidence that can be placed on information being communicated. Not all information is accurate, and there are multiple reasons for this. Information may have been valid at the time it was acquired, but could have changed over time. Competitors may have released misinformation, so its reliability should not be automatically accepted. Highlighting risk around the accuracy or validity of information will enable the recipient to risk assess it. If the information is to be acted on, the consequences of doing so can be weighed up. And this is really important to understand this, because when the dot-com bubble crash, there were lots of internet-based companies in the early 1990s that were creating quite a storm on the stock market, with the stock market rising particularly quickly. And lots of people were buying these shares in these internet companies, which was causing an inflation of the stock market. Now, no one in the companies or personally did any checks. There was no due diligence of the checks. People threw away fiscal responsibility And in some cases, 90% of budgets were spent on trying to buy shares in companies that were operating on the internet. When the bubble burst, there was a crash in the stock market and people tried to offload the shares. Some companies collapsed as a result of the loss of lots and lots of money, where they should have been looking at the fiscal responsibility. They should have had their responsibility of checking to ensure that the information that was coming through about these companies was valid and current. There was a lot of speculation around these companies, and many people operating the finances to companies to enable to buy shares just relied on the speculation. And because competitors were buying these shares, so did they. As a result of that, there was a huge collapse of what they called the dot-com industry of the internet, and only some survivors came out the other side, such as eBay and Amazon. Many companies collapsed with a loss of several $billion across the Nasdaq financial stock market. So question 34 is asking you to describe the importance of explaining to others the level of confidence that can be placed on the information being communicated. And don't forget to include things that enable them to identify the risks associated with the information and allows them to identify the consequences of acting on the information provided. So, covering the communication methods that we covered earlier on, such as letters, notice boards, presentation materials, storyboards, contracts, memos, brochures and newsletters, press releases, manuals, digital intranet websites, social media, instant messaging. They have advantages. And some of those advantages are they are a written record of communication. And the reader can go back to this communication at any time. And everyone gets the same message. And it can be seen as quite corporate and very professional. And in the case of emails, and certainly for notice boards, it can be sent to a large audience at once if you're using systems such as notice boards on intranet sites. But there are disadvantages. The disadvantages are the reader cannot ask questions in real time. The sender cannot read any non-verbal communications. They can come across as formal and cold. And most importantly, it relies on the recipient actually reading it. How many times have you walked past a notice board or ignored a letter or deleted an email or not been there when an email has come in? They can come across as too corporate and not caring or friendly enough. And they can be misinterpreted. Communication methods such as face-to-face, verbal communication, the use of the telephone, conference calling, meetings, presentations, they have disadvantages. Some of the disadvantages there are you need to arrange mutual availability to ensure that everybody is available to take that call or meeting when you can. For meetings, it actually requires physical locations, certainly for face-to-face. You're unable to see any non-verbal communications on telephone calls. People may not fully contribute in meetings. They may sit at one end of the room and not interject or have anything to say, because that meeting may not be relevant to them at all. They probably wonder why they're even there. but there are advantages, because with face-to-face communication, conference calling on devices such as GoToMeeting, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, you can include delegates from all over the world. And the recipient in a meeting or conference call can ask a question in real time and seek clarity there and then. So think about the other communication methods that you know of and weigh up the pros and cons for each of them. When would you use them? Question 35 is asking you to describe the advantages and disadvantages of 4 different methods of communication for different purposes. And further reading can be found on pages 95 to 96 of your unit handbook to help you answer this question. So in this section, we're going to look at understand how to communicate work-related information. And to do that, we'll explain the structure and purpose of different types of meetings in a business environment, explain how to prepare different types of meetings, explain the importance of having a meeting agenda which addresses objectives, and explain the importance of confirming objectives to be achieved during the meeting with the relevant people. And describe your responsibilities when leading or chairing a meeting. The structures and purpose of meetings in a business environment. So team meetings consist of team members, team leaders and managers who meet to discuss how things are going with the team and the team's objectives, and are they on target and track to be completed. Management meetings, the team leaders and managers discuss plans, problems and progress, particularly of teams, and how the teams are achieving and are they meeting their objectives. Training meetings are devoted to training team members on different topics. Appraisal meetings are one-to-one. They focus on job performance and development plans. Video conferences for team members who are not in the same physical location, and they allow the teams to set objectives even when that person is not present in the room with them. And sales meetings are for sales staff to cover objectives and successes. Meetings with customers for current and potential customers and to showcase their services and products. Meetings with suppliers and stakeholders to discuss the current arrangement and future orders. Meetings of directors, trustees, shareholders to discuss the business in detail. For example, progression, strategies and objectives. Question 36 is asking you to explain the structure and purpose of 4 different types of meetings in a business environment. So just to recap, you can use team meetings, management meetings, training meetings, video conferences, sales meetings, meetings with suppliers and stakeholders, and meetings of directors, trustees or shareholders. And further reading can be found on pages 103 to 108 of your unit handbook to answer this question. So, chairing a meeting, have a busy bee approach. Always be prepared. Always have your notes, any handouts, any presentations ready and ensure they're working. Be punctual. Be there before everybody else is and be there at the end and leave after everyone else has left. Be prompt in the response to a question. If you do not know the answer, ensure that you will get back to them and make sure you do get back to them with an answer. Be assertive, but do not be aggressive or rude. Be self-confident in your ability to lead the meeting. Be impartial. Do not take sides. Be honest and be rational. Do not lose your temper. Keep your cool, keep your calm, even when the pressure is on. Be positive, even if a message that's being delivered could be seen to be quite negative or quite downtrodden. Always give your people on the meeting a silver lining. Be approachable. Be current. Ensure that you know your information and you are up to date and valid with your current information. And most of all, be knowledgeable. And ensure you have a good understanding of what the meeting is for and what you want to achieve from it, so you don't deviate from it. So in order to do this, invite your delegates in good time. Ask what the delegates may wish to discuss in advance so they can be placed onto the agenda. Then create this agenda and ensure you keep to this agenda and ensure its structure. Know who will attend and have all the information that you will need. As George S. Patton once said, if everyone is thinking alike, then someone isn't thinking. People should be entitled to their opinions and their opportunities to explore them. So chairing a meeting, questions and responding, have a purpose of questions. The reason why those questions are there. Don't ask questions for questions' sake. Have a purpose. Have a means of dealing with any inappropriate questions. They may have to be spoken to after the meeting has occurred to answer the particular question being asked of you. Control the questions. When are you going to have questions asked of you? You may wish to have questions asked at the end. Dealing with response from others. Create clarity and harmony within the room. And ensure that the body language of yours and others is kept professional and showing that you are engaging. Things to plan for different types of meetings. For appraisal meetings, a review of progress since the last appraisal and how this person has progressed. If so, why? If not, why? Their current skills, their experience and knowledge. A setting and agreeing of objectives, targets and goals. Problems and solutions that have occurred throughout this time that the appraisal has taken place since the last one. And any personal issues, although any problems and solutions and personal issues, really an effective team leader should be on this before an appraisal is due. And that is being constantly in contact with your team members will allow you to do this. Any opportunities for career development and potential for promotion, again, these may be highlighted in an appraisal meeting, but this should also be kept an eye on throughout the entire time this person is working for you on your team. Training meetings, set clear training goals. Create a session plan which can be used as a guide. Create training materials that support those goals. And ensure that you have the correct equipment and that it works. I always like to arrive at least an hour earlier before I'm due to arrive to deliver any training meetings to ensure that my equipment works with the equipment that's supplied. I've had a few occasions where the laptop does not pair with the projector or the projector does not work. So it's always ensure that you have your materials and all the support materials that you have for the attendees are printed and ready to hand. Ensure attendees know the details of your training. The date, the time and the location is extremely important. For video conferences, set clear objectives, stay on task, prepare notes or any files that you want to share ahead of time. Create and share an agenda. You may wish to keep other delegates on mute whilst you are delivering your message to ensure that there are no interruptions or any other noises that could come across. For meetings with customers, research the individual or company if they are a potential customer and refresh your memory on important details if they are an existing customer. It shows that you know them and you have done your research work. Meet them in a professional environment such as a boardroom or an area of a lobby that you have that's set aside with sofas or chairs and tables. create any sales materials that you want to take, such as presentations or graphics. Set clear objectives or goals and practice your pitch so that you appear calm and professional in the meeting and know what you can offer. And be prepared for any particular types of questions and have the answers ready. And for sales meetings, create an agenda, set clear objectives, have a good understanding of any pipeline orders, repeat businesses and referrals. Have current sales numbers, have access to and an understanding of sales targets. Know how you are faring and be prepared to discuss any concerns or issues you may have. Your assignment question is asking you to explain how to prepare for 4 different types of meetings. So have a good understanding of the meeting, what it's for and what you wish to achieve. And invite people in good time. Know who's attending. Create an agenda. There's quite a list that you can choose from. So the importance of meeting agendas. The meeting is focused, structured and has direction. People can see what needs to be prepared before the meeting. Participants can anticipate questions they might want to ask you. Your assignment question is asking you to explain the importance of having a meeting agenda which addresses objectives. So ensure the meeting is focused, structured and has direction. The people can see what needs to be prepared before the meeting and participants can anticipate questions they may want to ask. The importance of confirming objectives to be achieved in a meeting. When everyone who is attending the meeting knows what is required, they can attend fully prepared. When meeting agendas are checked, delegates can ask for additional topics to be discussed or prepare questions in any other business. Delegates have the information or documents required in time for the meeting, and the best use of the meeting time is made. And decisions can be made in the meeting based on available reports and data. Your assignment question is asking you to explain the importance of confirming objectives to be achieved during a meeting with relevant people. So think back over what we have just discussed in order to help you explain that importance. You have responsibilities when leading or chairing a meeting. To outline the purpose of the meeting and the objectives or goals set out in the agenda. Helping attendees to reach agreement on each objective or goal. Helping to keep the meeting productive and moving forward. Making a decision about when an agenda point has been closed and helping attendees to move on to the next point. Ensure attendees don't interrupt each other and ensure the meeting runs on time. Providing a summary of what has been achieved at the end of the meeting and highlighting any actions attendees have to complete. And setting the date and time for the next meeting. Your assignment question is asking you to describe your responsibility. This concludes the 2 sessions relating to this unit. In the second module of this qualification, we will be covering the following topics. Understand how to deliver customer service and resolve problems. Understand how to develop working relationships with colleagues. Introduction to coaching, introduction to mentoring, and understanding personal development. You will have been sent by email a time, date and go-to meeting for you to log on for the teaching session which accompanies this presentation. And with these presentations, please ensure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel to ensure that you receive a notification of when these presentations go online. To get the most from your learning journey, please ensure you also log on to this online session with your trainer. We hope you found this presentation useful, and we encourage you to use the unit handbooks, which are accessible in PDF format from your e-portfolio to support your studies. For any questions, the remote assistance service, we can be contacted at learners@solutionsequinox.com, and as previously stated, your email subject must be marked as NCFE Leadership, and our 2 contact numbers are listed there in front of you. You'll soon be supplied a copy of a feedback form for you to supply feedback regarding these sessions, and we'll be grateful for your honest input. Thank you for listening.